You felt it, haven't you? That moment when you're sitting alone in your room at 2 in the morning, scrolling through your phone, looking at messages from people who supposedly care about you, and you realize something. You realize that every single conversation feels like work. Every interaction feels like you're performing, like you're auditioning for the role of being worthy of their attention. Your chest feels heavy, not because you're sad, but because you're exhausted. Exhausted from explaining yourself, from justifying your decisions, from trying to prove that you deserve basic respect. And here's the thing that really gets you. The people who drain you the most are often the ones you've known the longest. Your family, who still treats you like you're 12 years old. Your friends, who only call when they need something. Your romantic partner, who takes your presence for granted like you're a piece of furniture in their life. You give and give and give until you're empty, and then they have the audacity to ask why you're so distant lately. You know what nobody tells you? The reason you feel powerless in your relationships isn't because you're weak. It's because you're too available. You're too willing to bend, too quick to forgive, too desperate to maintain connections that stopped serving you years ago. And every time you answer that call, every time you respond to that text, every time you show up when they snap their fingers, you're teaching them that your time, your energy, your entire existence has no value. So let me ask you something. What would happen if you just stopped? What would happen if you cut off every single person who makes you feel small? Not with anger, not with explanations, not with a dramatic goodbye speech, but with something far more powerful, with complete and total silence. Now, before we go deeper, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. How many times have you checked your phone today, hoping to see a message from someone who barely thinks about you? How many times have you crafted the perfect response, deleted it, rewritten it, and deleted it again because you're terrified of saying the wrong thing? How many times have you canceled your own plans, ignored your own needs, betrayed your own boundaries just to keep someone else comfortable? If this is you, if you're tired of being the person everyone takes for granted, I want you to leave a comment right now saying, "I'm done being available." Just those 4 words. Because when you write that down, when you make that declaration public, something shifts inside you. And more importantly, you're going to see hundreds of other people writing the same thing, and you'll realize that this pattern you thought was your personal failure is actually a trap that millions of people fall into. You're not weak for feeling this way. You're human, but you're about to learn how to be a human who doesn't tolerate disrespect anymore. So go ahead, write it in the comments, "I'm done being available," and let's start this transformation together. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern psychology is only now beginning to grasp. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the concept of voluntary discomfort, the idea that by removing ourselves from the things we think we need, we discover what we actually need. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about those events. When you cut someone off, you're not being cruel. You're conducting an experiment in self-respect. You're testing a hypothesis. Does my well-being depend on this person's presence, or have I been carrying dead weight? The answer is almost always the latter. We attach ourselves to people not because they add value to our lives, but because we're terrified of the void their absence might create. But here's what happens in that void. You find yourself. You find the parts of you that were suffocating under the weight of other people's expectations. The you that doesn't need to perform. The you that doesn't need validation. The you that exists independent of anyone's approval. Let's talk about what's really happening when you feel compelled to maintain relationships that hurt you. It's not love. It's not loyalty. It's a survival mechanism that's been hijacked. As children, we learned that connection equals safety. We learned that abandonment equals death, so we developed strategies to keep people close, even when keeping them close was destroying us. We became people pleasers, fixers, givers, emotional support systems for people who would never return the favor. And every time we do this, every time we sacrifice our boundaries for someone else's comfort, we're reinforcing a neural pathway that says your needs don't matter. Your feelings aren't valid. Your existence is only valuable when you're useful to someone else. This is the cage you've been living in. And the key to that cage isn't forgiveness, isn't communication, isn't trying harder. It's severance. When you cut someone off, especially without explanation, you trigger something in them that they're not used to experiencing. Consequence. For the first time in possibly their entire relationship with you, they're forced to sit with the absence of your energy. They reach for their phone to text you and remember you're gone. They have a problem and realize you're not there to fix it anymore. They want validation and find only silence. And in that silence, something remarkable happens. The power dynamic that they've controlled for so long suddenly shifts. Because power in relationships isn't about dominance, it's about who needs the other person less. And when you demonstrate through your absence that you don't need them at all, when you show them that you're willing to walk away and never look back, you become dangerous. Not in a threatening way, in an untouchable way. Think about the last argument you had with someone who routinely disrespects you. You probably spent hours, maybe days, crafting the perfect explanation. You wanted them to understand why you were hurt. You wanted them to see things from your perspective. You wanted acknowledgement, apology, change. And what happened? They either dismissed your feelings, turned the situation around to make you the villain, or gave you some half-hearted sorry that changed nothing. This is because you were operating under a false assumption that they care about your feelings enough to modify their behavior. They don't. If they cared, they wouldn't have hurt you in the first place. When you cut people off without explanation, you're refusing to participate in that exhausting dance. You're saying, I don't need you to understand. I don't need you to agree. I don't need your permission to prioritize myself. And that refusal to engage, that absolute withdrawal of your presence, communicates more effectively than 1,000 carefully worded paragraphs ever could. Let me give you a concrete example. You have a friend. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah only calls you when she needs something. She vents about her problems for hours, but somehow never has time to listen to yours. She cancels plans last minute, but expects you to drop everything when she's in crisis. You've tried talking to her about this. You've tried setting boundaries. Nothing changes, so one day you just stop answering. Stop. She texts, you don't respond. She calls, it goes to voicemail. Weeks pass, then months. And during those months, something interesting happens. You realize that your life didn't fall apart without Sarah in it. In fact, you have more energy now. More time for people who actually reciprocate. More mental space for your own goals. And Sarah, she's probably confused, maybe even angry. But here's what matters. She's thinking about you. She's wondering what she did wrong. She's experiencing discomfort. And that discomfort is the only thing that might ever make her reflect on her behavior. Not your words, not your explanations, not your pleading, your absence. Now here's where it gets psychologically sophisticated. When you cut people off, you need to do it with what I call emotional sovereignty. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about making them suffer. This isn't about hoping they'll come back different. Emotional sovereignty means you genuinely don't care what happens next. You're not cutting them off to teach them a lesson. You're cutting them off because your peace is non-negotiable and they're disturbing your peace. This distinction is crucial because if you're still emotionally invested in their reaction, if you're checking to see if they've noticed you're gone, if you're hoping they'll apologize and change, then you haven't really cut them off. You've just created distance while keeping the chain intact. True severance requires that you mourn the relationship, accept what it was and what it will never be, and then release it completely. No resentment, no longing, just neutral indifference. The 48 Laws of Power teaches us that absence increases respect and honor. The law states that too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you're seen and heard from, the more common you appear. When you withdraw from someone's life entirely, you create scarcity. And scarcity, in human psychology, creates value. This is why people who've ghosted you suddenly come back months or years later, acting like you're the most important person in the world. Not because they suddenly developed emotional maturity, but because your absence created a vacuum where your presence used to be, and vacuums are psychologically uncomfortable. People rush to fill them. But here's the critical part. When they do come back, if you let them back in, without any real change in the dynamic, you've just taught them that your boundaries are negotiable. You've shown them that if they wait long enough, if they say the right words, they can resume treating you the same way they always have. This is where most people fail. They cut someone off. The person comes back with an apology, and they fold immediately because they're so relieved to have the connection back. But a real apology isn't words, it's sustained behavioral change over time. And you don't get to witness that behavioral change unless you maintain the boundary, unless you stay, disappeared long enough for them to actually transform, which most of them never will. And that's okay, because the goal isn't to fix them. The goal is to protect yourself. The goal is to create a life where only people who genuinely respect you have access to your energy. And if that means your circle gets smaller, if that means you spend more time alone, if that means you miss certain people even though you know they were toxic for you, that's the price of self-respect. And it's a price worth paying. Let me tell you what happens when you truly master this. When you become someone who can cut people off without guilt, without explanation, without looking back. You develop what psychologists call an internal locus of control. This means your sense of worth comes from within, not from external validation. You stop needing people to like you. You stop needing people to understand you. You stop needing people to approve of your choices. You become psychologically self-sufficient. And when you reach that state, something paradoxical happens. People become more drawn to you. Not the takers, not the users, not the energy vampires, but quality people who recognize that you value yourself too much to tolerate disrespect. You attract people who match your energy instead of drain it. You create relationships based on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. But here's the hard truth nobody wants to hear. To get to that place, you have to be willing to lose everyone. And I mean everyone. Your family, your friends, your romantic partner, everyone. Because if you're not willing to lose them, they have power over you. If you're holding on to relationships out of fear of being alone, you're not in relationships, you're in hostage situations. Real relationships, healthy relationships, empowering relationships only exist between two people who are both fully willing to walk away if the dynamic becomes toxic. That's not cold, that's mature. That's not selfish, that's self-aware. That's not cruel, that's having standards. And standards are the difference between living and merely surviving. So here's your 7-day challenge, and this one is going to feel uncomfortable. For the next 7 days, I want you to identify one person in your life who consistently makes you feel small, drained, or disrespected. Just one person, and I want you to cut them off. Completely. No explanation, no goodbye message, no closure conversation. Just stop responding. Block them if you need to. And for those 7 days, I want you to observe what happens in your mind. Notice the guilt that comes up, that's your conditioning. Notice the urge to reach out and fix things. That's your fear of abandonment. Notice the stories you tell yourself about why you should give them another chance. That's your trauma trying to convince you that you don't deserve better. Just observe it all without acting on it. And at the end of those 7 days, ask yourself one question. Am I better off with this person in my life or without them? If the answer is without them, you've just taken the first step toward reclaiming your power. If the answer is with them, then you reach out and re-establish contact. But now you do it from a position of choice, not obligation. You're no longer there because you're desperate for connection. You're there because you've evaluated the relationship and decided it's worth your energy. That's the difference between being a passive participant in your life and being the architect of your life. Remember, cutting people off isn't about being harsh. It's It's about being honest. It's about acknowledging that some people were only meant to be in your life for a season, and that season is over. It's about understanding that carrying dead relationships is like carrying a corpse on your back. It might have been alive once, it might have meant something to you, but now it's just weight, and you can't run toward your future while carrying the dead past. So you set it down, you walk away, you don't look back, and you trust that the space created by their absence will be filled with something better, even if that something better is just peace, just solitude, just you finally learning to be enough for yourself. If this video resonated with you, if you've been carrying relationships that you know deep down are destroying you, then I want you to understand something. You're not here by accident. You're here because part of you, the part that's been screaming for change, the part that's exhausted from performing, the part that knows you deserve better, that part of you is finally ready to be heard. And I'm here to tell you that you're absolutely right. You do deserve better, but nobody is going to give it to you. You have to take it. You have to cut off what's draining you. You have to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. Every week on this channel, I share strategies like this, psychological insights that most people will never understand, tools that separate people who get walked on from people who command respect. This isn't about being cold. This isn't about being heartless. This is about being strong enough to choose yourself when everyone else has trained you to choose them. So if you're ready to stop being everyone's emotional support animal, if you're ready to stop sacrificing your peace for other people's comfort, if you're ready to finally become the person who walks away from disrespect instead of tolerating it, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video. And if this message helped you, if you finally feel seen and understood, leave a like so more people who need this can find it. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, the power was always yours. You just forgot how to use it.